with us, sir. If you give me a second before I get out of your way, let me quickly introduce the rest of your panel that you'll be speaking to. Joining Mr. Uche Orji, we have Ms. Bola Adeshola. She's the chairman, Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. Good to have you with us, ma'am. Also joining us, we have Mr. Ororo Akpata, the managing partner and head of energy and project group, Templars Law. You're welcome. Also in this panel, we'll have Mr. Abba Bello, the managing director, Nexim. Please make him welcome.
Thank you, Ike.
And then joining us as well, Ms. Kofo Arola, the Chief Executive Officer, Woven Finance. We're pleased to have you with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Have you with us. Also joining us, someone who is on so many boards. I refuse to start to name the list lest we take out too much time. She's the managing partner, Compliance Professionals PLC. Please make welcome Ms. Ifeko Omoigu Okaru.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here. Good afternoon.
Have you with us. And last person I'll name, and then I'll take a back seat, the Executive Director of Citibank. Please put your hands together for Ms. Neka Enwereji.
Thanks, Ike. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have all of you here. I'm going to take a back seat. This is a real honor to have all of you in one space and for free. So allow me to take a backstage seat right now and hand over to our moderator, Mr. Uche Orji.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ike. And good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Uche Orji, and I'm the CEO of the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. I'm delighted to be your moderator for today's panel discussion on the topic, employability for corporate Nigeria, challenges, opportunities, and needed action. I'd like to quickly give a background to our discussion on employability today. The focus is a critical issue that needs urgent concerted attention, not only because of the importance of ensuring Nigeria's steaming youth are gainfully employed so as to ensure the optimal productivity of the nation, but also because of the impact it will have on other social malaise caused by unemployment. These include crimes like banditry, militancy, internet fraud, kidnapping, and also the massive brain drain that is now bedeviling the country. The challenge of unemployment in Nigeria is multifaceted and one that we can spend the whole day discussing. These challenges include lack of requisite skill sets and professional competencies that make our youth employable, insufficient employment opportunities in Nigeria, inadequate access to information about job openings, and a lot more. Today, we intend to dimension these thorny issues and attempt to profile solutions. I am confident that we'll do justice to today's topic because I have a star-studded panel with me. So without further ado, I will begin by asking all the panelists to give a quick opening comment about the challenge of employability in Nigeria. Starting with Abba Bello. And Abba, I will love you to quickly give us one opening comment on your take on this issue of challenge of employability in Nigeria. And many believe in the quality of education in our tertiary institutions is a major contributing factor to the employment issues that we have touched on. Many organizations have openings, but have to go through onerous search to find quality candidates. How do you think this issue will be tackled, and who should be responsible for what?
Okay, thank you very much, Uche. And thank you to Enterprise NGR for inviting me to be part of this very laudable initiative. And employment in Nigeria, or unemployment in Nigeria, is a thing to worry about. And I mean, with 33% unemployment rate, okay, that now brings to the fore where the major problems are. Okay, you spoke about insecurity, brain drain, and so on and so forth. But where does that problem start from? Is it because there is a dearth of employable Nigerians, or because there are no jobs? I think it's a combination of both. Okay. While jobs are becoming more and more a problem to come by, the employability of Nigerian youth is also a problem. Okay. Anybody who has conducted interviews to bring in people on board his organization or her organization in the past decade would see that continuously there is a dearth of knowledge, a dearth of skill, and a dearth of capacity. Now, where does this start from? I think it's not only with the tertiary institutions. It goes further than the tertiary institution. It goes back to even basic education. Many of us that went to school in the 70s and 80s started getting prepared from when we started. And I had the opportunity of going to King's College, Lagos, and I think IK went to King's College, Lagos too. When you come into King's College from the beginning, there is a first subject that they teach you. And that subject is taken by the principal of King's College, Lagos, and it's called civics, where it starts to prepare you to be a good citizen. It starts to prepare you to be a good, or it starts to prepare you to be for your future, okay? And on top of that, there is something that is called a guidance counselor, who from the beginning, from the onset, when you're a young person, it recognizes the kind of skills that you have inherent in you and starts guiding you to that. And then you go on to the tertiary institutions that, apart from the knowledge they instill on you, they give you other peripheral advice and training that prepares you for the workplace, prepares you for the workplace. Now, then you come out of school. One thing that I think happened that is good, or was good by conception in Nigeria, was NYSC, which is supposed to be a part of the internship program to integrate you into the workplace. That has also collapsed. And today, NYSC has become just, let's do it. Okay, get the certificate and go on. But on the other side of employment, we are having more and more lack of it, okay, from the employers now. First, we all know that organizations or sectors have collapsed. And I think it was when he said in 1986 when he graduated, and I remember when I graduated, before graduation, you see on your notice boards, Unilever, then they were called Lever Brothers, you see PZ, advertising for jobs. Then it was the employers that were advertising for jobs. So if we look at it, for instance, the textile industry barely exists. We have other industries that have gradually collapsed, okay? And so the jobs are becoming narrower and narrower, and the skills are not there. Again, the educational system is not measuring up to what the workplace is becoming now. Changes are happening in the workplace very quickly, and education has remained virtually traditional. Education in Nigeria is still the traditional education that we knew from decades ago, okay? And it's not measuring up to what the workplace is becoming now. We're getting into the technological and digital world. Jobs have changed, and the skills that are expected have also changed. So graduates come out today, and the skills that are required do not exist coming out of the university. And for me, I think what YOE is doing today is coming late, and it's short term. We need to expand it into a more long-term preparation of people that come out of our universities today into the workplace. So we need to start building back from basic education to the secondary education and tertiary education to prepare our youth for the kind of skills that are required today in the workplace. But like you know, Uche, unemployment in Nigeria at 33% of the total population is something to worry about. And I congratulate YOE for this initiative and also encourage other organizations, the corporate world, to buy into this and help prepare youth to become more employable for the kind of skills that are needed in Nigeria today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abba. Really appreciate it. Now, I'm sorry, actually, I've done a quick time check before we started, but I'm going to combine your opening remarks and your questions so that we can save time, and that gives each speaker roughly 3.5 to 4 minutes. So I'm going to switch quickly then to Kofo Arolo. Kofo, please, can you give us a 1-minute take on the challenge of employability in Nigeria, and also, if you may please address a follow-on from Abba's question, which is, other than the quality of education, another problem we seem to see is the lack of exposure to workplace experience and culture early in the formative years. If you can give us your take on this as well. Thank you. Kofo?
Thank you very much. So when we boil it down, quality of education speaks to the alignment between the output of the education system and the input required to perform optimally in the workplace. So a key indicator of the quality of the education system is essentially employability. So what employability speaks to the ability to arm students with the holistic skills required to transition, from a theoretical environment into the workplace. And that takes form in it speaks to different areas, such as, practical skills, soft skills, and of course, the theoretical skills one requires to deliver in the workplace. If we look specifically to Nigeria, the challenges we face includes, broadly access to education, or good quality education. We know the likes of ASU strike, and that is still ongoing. So there is a need to address areas in that regard. Of course, the nature and the way education is delivered as well, particularly now as we move into the digital age. There's a need to transform the way education is delivered and the content as well. But also avenues to practicalizing the knowledge gained during that education phase, and the seamless transition between school, education and the workforce. So there are a couple of challenges that we face in Nigeria, as I mentioned: quality education, avenues to practicalize the knowledge, i.e. internships, and the seamless transition between school and the workforce. So if we overlay this with the pandemic, this gap has further widened, particularly in the area of the need for digital skills. So broadly speaking, the education system and the curriculum needs to catch up in its delivery, its content, and how it prepares youth for a successful professional career. The gap and the inconsistencies between what we have, or what we're seeing in the field of education, and the ability to deliver quality education that aligns to what the workforce requires, it impacts Nigeria as a whole. Not only in terms of the unemployment figures, also employers are unable to find and locate talent that will grow their business. And overall, this affects the economy and naturally GDP. So if GDP is not increasing, then that will again affect the ability to invest for the government to invest in education in Nigeria. So what happens is everyone in the economy, essentially feels this pain. But if we hone in on the challenge, speaking to the seamless transition between education and congratulations to the team and YOE, because this is the bridge that we see this is the gap that we seek to bridge by removing those frustrations and providing the skills training and support, as well as internship required to significantly enhance employability and creating a conduit to employment. And of course, the benefits to the economy will be endless. So if I speak to myself, I schooled a little bit in Nigeria, but I also, overlaid that with, education from abroad. But what I'm speaking to there is that, it opens up having that the practical nature of experience of education. I did a lot of internships during school as well, and it really opened up opportunities for me because of the internships that I was able to have access to. I was instantly employable as soon as I left the workforce, and it allowed me to work in different countries, Switzerland, UK, etc., etc. So I do not want to downplay to anyone the importance of having that internship experience. Of course, we've all heard of employers that want to recruit school leavers, but they also require 2 to 3 years experience. So again, that highlights the importance of having a structured internship program and having a conduit between formal education and the workforce. We have the NYC program, which has its gaps. If we look to countries abroad, such as Switzerland and Germany, they also have a scheme whereby at high school level, you can actually choose whether you want to go a trade route or more formal university route. And that really speaks to the strengths that each individual has in delivering value to the economy. So again, that sort of speaks to providing flexibility in the way we approach education, not only in how we deliver, courses these days, but also speaking to the strengths of the individual as well. So, again, the YOE team, congratulations on this launch. And I look forward to further supporting this anyhow and any way I can.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to come back to the subject of education later because somebody listening to you and listening to Abba talk on the subject of education will say, well, how do we backfill our skills when the universities are on strike some of the time? What do you do with that time? And what sort of skills do you acquire? And I think we're going to come back to that beyond just the classroom education, what you can do and things you can do to improve yourself. Because sometimes, and most times, it's really not classroom learning that teaches you all the skills you need. But I'll come back to this, especially during the closing remarks. But thank you very much, Kofo. Now I'm going to switch to Ogogo to speak about, give us your 1-minute take on this issue of employability. And you are very aware we have a problem of youth employability in Nigeria has been addressed, and it cannot be solved in silos. How can the private sector work together to solve this problem? What is your take on this matter, and how do you think private sector in a coordinated manner might be able to attack this situation? Mr. Pata, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chen. It's good to see you again. Also, I would like to thank Enterprise NG for putting this initiative together. I think it's an awesome initiative. And the day has just started, and we've already seen the advantages of being here. So thanks everyone at NGR, Enterprise NG. And to my panelists, it's a pleasure being with you. It's such a great set of people that I'm sitting with, so it's a pleasure. My brief remarks to start with is to our students in the audience. I can relate to their current journey. I'm aware of the challenges as I was once in those shoes because as a professional and as an employer, I see firsthand the challenges of employability at my firm and in the general workplace. And I hope in a few minutes we talk about this, right, and deliberate, that we're able to push this conversation forward because it's very long overdue. With regards to employability, not one that can be solved in silos, not one that can be solved in silos, and how the private sector to put the private sector together to improve access to career opportunities. I would frame this issue by defining the challenges and exploring possible solutions. And as I said, I definitely concur with the statement that it can't be solved in silos. You need, and as they say, you need a village to make this go away and an industry. I'm going to say to everyone here, because perhaps a general disclaimer, I'm a lawyer. I'm going to discuss my experiences based on for my profession. So, I work at Templars, a law firm in Lagos. We regularly hire lawyers but often, despite having completed both university and the Nigerian law school, which technically is a postgraduate school, as it were, we still find that we need to do certain things to make them employable. You know, employability is about whether they are fit for purpose. When a law school graduate comes into templates or any place of employment, we've always asked ourselves, are they employable as they arrive? As they arrive, or is there more that you need to do to make them usable? Another problem we often encounter is the lack of commercial awareness. And it creates a challenge from the onset to translate academic theories to practical business skills.
Okay. Well, maybe he's going to have to reconnect. Let me switch then to Bola, and we'll take Mr. Abata when he comes back in, please. Bola, hi. See you again.
Hi, okay.
Well, Bola, I'm going to ask you to give us a 1-minute take on the issue of the challenge of employability in Nigeria. And maybe speak specifically also, after your general background statement to it, speak to your role as the chairperson of the LSETF. In what ways you reckon the public sector can better collaborate with private sector to improve youth employability in Nigeria? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uche. Like everyone else, I'd like to thank Enterprise NGO for inviting me here, and also to commend the YOE because it seeks to enhance Nigeria's future productive capacity. You've only given me a few minutes, so I'll do my best I have 3 or 4 points that I'd like to bring to the fore. First, in simple terms, the concept of unemployability arises from a discordance between available jobs and available skills. And everyone is seeking decent employment. And so my view is that whilst the private sector will create more of the jobs, the public sector also should act as an enabler and a partner. And so your question about public-private sector collaboration and how that can improve employability, I think there are broader issues which include improving the economy and the business climate, but that's not the mandate of our discussion today. So I'll touch on 4 quick areas. One is identify what we need to do, how we should do it, and who will do it. So the overarching need for the stakeholders in the employment or labor ecosystem to effectively engage and come up with a holistic approach to tackling employability and what each stakeholder will do. And these stakeholders, of course, are across, like you say, private sector, public sector, educational institutions. And in the public sector, we're talking about, say, the Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Employment, and in those ministries where people create a lot of employment. So, construction, agriculture, and so on. My belief is that the engagement is happening, but maybe somewhat uncoordinated. And really, to move the dial, a concerted crisis mode needs to be triggered. And of course, interventions like the YOE initiative as well. And I'll just share a couple of things that we're doing at the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. We have, I believe, made some progress in terms of collaboration. But before I even talk specifically about that, Lagos State, because of its position as a main commercial hub in the country, inadvertently imports unemployment. Data, even though it's a bit stale from 2017, that the Lagos Bureau of Statistics was able to provide, about 90 people migrate to Lagos every hour. So if this is 6 or 7 years old, I couldn't lay my hands on anything more current. Then it therefore means that with all the effort and the work that goes into trying to prevent it. Earlier on this year, as an example of what we've been able to do, we held the second Lagos State Employment Summit, again, bringing stakeholders right across the board to review where we were in Lagos State and to identify what we could do. So we came up with an 8-point action plan, which I can share after this event. One of the key recommendations, which we've been hammering on for quite a while, is about the reform of the NYSC program and maybe converting it to an apprenticeship scheme of sorts so that people will be able to acquire skills and maybe even start their own businesses as well. And so partnerships between public and private sector are really a main pillar for us in the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. We're partnering with, say, construction companies. They're large employers of labor. And the interesting thing is not even so much vocation, is not artisanal skills for their workers, but soft skills. So they turn up to work on time, they comply with safety standards, those types of skills that will keep them in employment and prevent these companies from bringing in workers from neighboring countries. The second area that I want to touch on is also, again, a public-private sector collaboration that we have at the LSCTF, and it's the creation of a labor market information system. I don't know how many people would remember in the old days, in the late 60s and 70s, there was a labor exchange almost opposite the Koi Cemetery, where people could go and pick up workers, domestic workers, drivers, and so on and so forth. Well, that was analog. And what we are looking at is a digital version of that. We're working in partnership with with GIZ. GIZ is the German Development Agency, and we're establishing a digital platform. And already we have focus session groups that we've put together, made up of, labor unions, and technical and vocational institutions. So this platform will also give predictive information in terms of the skills of the future, so that educational institutions can also adapt their curriculum and prepare people for those jobs that will be happening later on. I think we're going to have a beta version of this by December this year, and hopefully we will launch by the middle of June next year. So I'm very excited about this initiative. The third area in terms of public-private sector cooperation is all about incentives. What incentives can we give to employers of labor, trainers, people in training, organizations, universities, and so on, that will incentivize them to support youth employment and employability in Nigeria. There's a road infrastructure development tax credit scheme that people who build roads enjoy, and there's no reason why tax incentives cannot, or tax-related incentives cannot be offered to private organizations that are championing these causes, and of course other types of incentives that will engender interventions, such as, say, the YOE. The final area, I think, for us is recognizing prior learning in employment. And by prior learning, basically the knowledge, skills, competencies that individuals acquire through formal or informal means outside sort of the traditional school, and this includes apprenticeship as well. And my belief is that this will help youth who have learned certain skills, because we shouldn't just focus on graduates alone. There's a whole hump of young people who are not graduates, but who may have learned skills along the way, so carpentry, baking, and so on, from recognized places. And what we're looking at is how can these be certified? There's already TVET, which is the technical vocational educational training. How can these be certified so that these people can be absorbed into a more structured, formal, and sustainable labor market? So it's important that we recognize these skills and we help them, and enhance it basically through not just enhancing the hard skills, but also soft skills training. A whole lot more I can talk about that we are already doing and putting into action. But I think that these concrete interventions, what Enterprise NG is doing, what the likes of the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund are doing, unemployable to actual employment or entrepreneurship, and really create what YOE is aspiring to, which is building a significant cohort of African young people in jobs and in enterprise. So in closing, I look forward to a vibrant relationship between the YOE and the LSCTF. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Paula. Really, thank you. Quite a number of things there to unpack, from reforming the NYSC to a tax incentive scheme used to drive an apprenticeship program, to vocational education and partnerships between the public sector and the enterprise and programs such as the Enterprise NGR. Thank you very, very much for that. Do we have Mr. Akpata back?
I think
Yes,
I'm
you're
back.
back.
And
You're back. You're back.
Apologies to everyone. Something
It's not
went
your
on
fault.
here. And usually I'm technologically challenged. Well, so basically, just to conclude on the first points I was talking about, which was with regards to the challenges, I was basically saying that we have people that come into the workplace that are not fit for purpose, where we see lack of commercial awareness, as well as the industry attachment that is that occurs. In my view, appears to be just ticking the boxes. It's not well coordinated or thought out, because you see the students come in there a few weeks before their exams, and all they're doing is just a reading session, not really working. I think there are some ways that we've come up with, we as the legal community, we came up with some solutions to this, to say to ourselves, how do we make lawyers that come into our firms employable? The leading law firms came up with an entry-level training program, which we call Elevate. It's a collaboration among the leading commercial law firms. We brought lawyers from participating law firms, international law firms, as well as the clients. They came over. We do it every year as we have new intakes. That's the first thing, because we need to make them employable. We teach substantive and soft skills law, substantive law and soft skills. We teach commercial awareness and discernment. In my view, discernment, right? Like, I believe it was before someone said critical. No, I think, well, one of the speakers talked about critical thinking, which in my view is akin to discernment, because you need to have folks in there that they have, what's their judgment call? You can have all the education in the world, but you don't have a judgment call. So you need to, we need to have discernment teaching, which is not a skill, but it comes from mentoring. So we did something we called speed dating. Speed dating, where you have, maybe we have 100 lawyers or 100 employees. You can 5 minutes each of them. You talk to them. You see the way you try to hear the way they think and the way they are able to solve problems. All this up to mold new intakes. They could be, we see the smartest graduates coming, first-class graduates, but at the end of the day, they are unable to really serve the business, because it's not theory right now; it's practical skills that we're looking for. We also I also think we should take a further step back and start going into the schools to include and influence the curriculum, because I mean, as I said from the onset, I'm a lawyer, and my experiences are shaped from that profession, where we're in the law school and we do all kinds of subjects, but it doesn't prepare us for the real world. We come out being unemployable. We're commercial antecedents or law firms today. Well, what happens? We're doing mergers and acquisitions. We're doing insolvency law and all that. But with graduates that come out of the law school have never done any M&A kind of work. Well, I'm not saying that the law school should go into deep tutelage of that, but at least let them have a brief understanding of acquisitions or collaboration. So that's something I think we can do to help that to further make people employable.
You have to wrap up now, Mr.
Yeah,
Bata.
I'm going to wrap up quickly. Basically, I think we should formalize vacation jobs and work experiences, because we should make it extremely competitive to come in as an intern, as it occurs overseas. I mean, I had my son this summer studying like he was trying to do his final exams. But I said, what is this about? He's trying to get into Goldman Sachs, because it's extremely competitive to get in there. Because once you go in there, if you do well, you already get a job as you come out. So it's something we should make the internship competitive and which will create the awareness. So to conclude, I would say we need to take this seriously and tackle this with the importance it deserves. It will only lead to poor harvests and, in my view, self-sabotage among way in the private sector if this is not done properly, because these are where the invariably the recipients of this on employability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is very insightful on so many areas, quite a number of key points there. Some of the ones that jumped out at me include actually influencing the curriculum, make them more fit for purpose. I think that is super important. And I personally think also that the concept of speed dating and making internship competitive is all very interesting. Young people, when you say speed dating, you have to be very specific what you mean, sir. But I think this is helpful context. But I think this is about exposing them to work environment so that they actually start to figure out what it means to be ready to join the workforce. I'll come back to the point about influencing the curriculum, because I think that's super important. And there I would just tell a personal story. My idea of going to work to an accountant was actually a number of people, but including my engineering professor telling me, you like finance, why don't you try a hand in learning finance as well as engineering? And those things are very important. People need to be spoken to in those terms. Now I'm going to switch to Ifweko Mogio Karu, and quick confession: my very first job was working for Ifweko. So I think Ifweko, I'm not carbon dating you, but I'm just letting people know that this whole idea of mentorship is actually super important and helpful. So if I could give us your 1 minute take on the subject, and then please also, given the depth of your consulting experience, what lessons do you think Nigeria can draw from internship models? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uche. And this is really a great topic. And I like to thank Enterprise NGR for this. And it's a great topic, not just because it meets the needs of the business community, which is, again, I guess, why Enterprise NGR is also doing it. But it's also a security, imperative. And let me explain. We've talked a lot about it, the employment situation being 33%. But when we just understand the sheer numbers, according to the UN, as of July 2000, by July this year, Nigeria will be 216.8 million. There's a net addition to our population. By the time you look at births and deaths, of 5.4 million every year. So just as you're trying to catch up, more people are coming into the net. A net increase of about 1% every 6 seconds. If you look at that and think about it every hour, we're talking about 600 people. And if you put in context that Enterprise NGR's target is 5,000 interns with the ultimate target at max 100,000 at least to start, we begin to realize that the great work that Enterprise NGR is doing is in a sense a great start, but it's actually a drop. It's good for us to start, but the challenge is pretty large. And a lot of people who may want to have this opportunity may not have that opportunity. Another related issue I like to talk about is the levels of unemployment or employability issues at different levels. I may want to think about it from the perspective of starting with those who never went to school. UNICEF this year, during the International Day of Education, says 10.5 million children are out of school in Nigeria. Millions of Nigerian children have never set foot into classroom. So when we discuss internship, we make even certain assumptions. We make certain assumptions that you've gone to school. In the case of Enterprise NGR, in terms of its immediate focus, that you've even graduated. Meanwhile, if you look along the lines, there are those who never went to school, there are those who dropped out from primary school, those who dropped out of secondary school, those who dropped out of university for different reasons. In certain cases, the opportunity was not there. In certain cases, the infrastructure, the schools are just not there. And then when we're discussing technology right now is really just in the urban areas. And even just now, Ogogo just dropped out because of, technology infrastructure. So that is those of us that already have internships, not to talk of those who have gone through that process, who have never used technology in their life. So this challenge is enormous. But that's why it's a good thing to start. But I think as we think about it, we need to also ask ourselves, how do we scale? Because one of the challenges that we have also is a growing divide between the haves and the have-nots. And so the more we give to those who have, and we give them internships, and those who do not have less, it creates even that other larger national security issue. And so that's something to put in perspective. But then there are even other challenges. There's a challenge we've talked about the suitability for employment, but we've talked a lot about soft skills. But let me also talk about attitudes, behaviors, habits. How do you address someone who believes that I don't want to report somebody just by speaking up? How do you address even just to speak up in an environment where you need to speak up? How do you address behavior that people don't want to make mistakes? Because the nature of the school system is such that you need to pass exams. It's not really about the fact that if you fail, it's okay, you learn from it. How do you address those attitudinal issues that are deeply ingrained as people move from primary to secondary to tertiary? And then by the time you now graduate, you now have a situation where people are no longer open to learning. And you know that you do not have the skills, but you're not open to learning. So how do you address that? So we could go into all that. How do you address the fact that the leadership to drive this is yet to even acknowledge what needs to be done? We may even feel helpless about it. We need several enterprise NGOs. How do you address a behavior that feels that the problem is government's to solve, as opposed to the fact that, yes, government has a role, there's no doubt about it. But 10 million children out of school, never been to school, which funding do we have? And even if you don't have corruption, the funding is not there. You have another challenge of poverty, where people just do not have the income. And that brings me to the other aspect you've asked, because I could go on, of the types of internships. What are the models of internships? And believe me, there are more, and I've even created some. And let me talk about one that may not be so obvious to us, but is real. And that is internships at home versus internships in the office. What is the role of the parent in grooming the child for those behaviors and those attitudes, which are the foundation for even the skills? We have virtual versus physical internships. Supposing you are in a remote location, so it helps to do virtual, but suppose you don't have technology, how do you address that? So those are things to look at. You also have paid versus unpaid internships, and typically, and sometimes, again, another challenge is disconnect. And I can tell you I'm even guilty about that. I was just about to get an intern into my place of work 2 days ago. And we're looking at our pay structures and so on, and where do we fit, how do we typically, because we get interns, and we have a pay band for interns. But this particular person, very bright girl, she can't even afford to have her, data card. Money is so important to the family. We have bright children who cannot even afford to transport themselves. So one of the challenges in paid versus unpaid is, supposing you have a bright person who can't afford all those basics, and then you're balancing that with others in the workplace who want, because you want to create a very balanced work environment. How do you provide internship in those situations? And so in a developed country, certain things are assumed, but in our environment, you can't assume certain things because those basics are not there. You also have mid-school internships. I had that helps you to clarify your career. I remember I'm a science student. I was best in my A-level class, physics, math. And so all my classmates went to do engineering. But the more I learned, I read about engineering, I was like, that's not the kind of work I want to do. And so in my career choice, I chose accounting. And guess what? In my first year, I was like, should I do this subject? And so I was lucky to say, okay, you know what, why don't you come during vacation? And so I spent all my vacation period while in University of Lagos, going to an accounting firm to see whether it was something I liked. That's a kind of internship. But again, we're talking internships now where you've even finished. How do you even get people prepared for the workplace after they've even finished the school when they're supposed to have actually put school behind? And then added complication, yes, time. Added complication of somebody feeling that, but I finished school. I mean, what is it going to teach me? So those are, those are different models, and we need to situate a kind of model to a kind of need. And I think the last thing I'd just like to touch on because of time is what are the lessons? And I think I'd like to also address those who are listening, those who are looking in, those who want to take advantage of these internships. One is there's no end to learning. And understand also that you went to school doesn't mean that's the end of school. That you got a first class doesn't mean that you are ready for career, you're ready for work, you're ready for a job, or that you got a third class or you got a pass. Does not mean that you'll not be the best in class in whatever you choose to do. So there's no stopping learning, there's no shortcuts, commitment is required. You need to also always ensure that at the end of the day, is how committed, and don't limit yourself to only Nigerian opportunities, because even if there are no Nigerian opportunities, there are virtual internship opportunities outside Nigeria, because the space may just even not be big enough for the sheer amount of numbers. And you can do some of this virtually, and you can do some of this informally. And I'd like to end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe we can listen to you on and on, particularly on all these great ideas. I mean, internship at home. And I think that is something that really struck a chord, and opportunity sets that are open, and really figuring out what you want to do is about opening your mind. Thank you very much, Ifeko. Really, really wonderful. And we're going to switch to Neka, it's the last panelist to speak on your 1 minute take on everything, and also our youth, from what Ifeko said, obviously need a lot of guidance to make the right career calls, but many of them do not have access to the appropriate mentorship opportunities. In your view, what do you think can be done to democratize access to good quality mentors with a view to harnessing hidden potentials wherever they may exist in Nigeria? Of course, the numbers are not in our favor, but please, any thoughts you might have on this would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Uche. I think the beauty of speaking last, or maybe the curse of speaking last, that
you summarize everyone
gets to say yes, everything you want to say. So, but I'll just say a few things. First of all, I would say kudos to YOE for taking the leadership on this imperative. Yeah. To my commentary on the challenge of employability, when I turn around the coin, I would say that employability is largely in the hands of our youth, simply because it has a strong nexus to self-development. Amidst the very limited job space, opportunities in the job space, our youth really need to, first and foremost, take ownership of their destinies by developing themselves to stand out, and to use the chairman's words, to fly. The great thing is that in our digital and information age, there are immense digital resources, and a lot has been said about that, to develop those skills beyond the formal education system. I noted that Emeka in his opening video spoke to his need to make himself more marketable to employers. Well, I would say that by identifying this constraint, I would say he's more than halfway there by turning the challenge into an opportunity. Yeah, but to the core question that you've asked me, how do we democratize access to good quality mentors? How do we scale mentorship and deepen the reach? I think I'll speak to two avenues to scale mentorship. One is through the school system, and I think a lot has been said about that. And secondly, through digital technology. Again, Mr. Deshola, incidentally, my mentor, stole my thunder when she spoke to what they're doing in the digital space. But it was music to my ears, really. That a lot of the things that I was thinking about, just thinking about what YOE is doing and what else can be done in terms of mentorship. It was nice to see that, trust my action woman, a lot is already going on. But just to say that given that we have both secondary and tertiary institutions in the remotest parts of the country, we really can't miss that opportunity to maximize this platform to guide our youth to prepare for the workplace, shape their minds earlier on. The schools can access quality volunteers through the platforms. They're professionals everywhere, right? You have, in the remotest part of the country, you have all kinds of professionals who work there. You have salesmen, for consumer companies who are professionals. You just have all kinds of people. You have Nigerians in diaspora who can provide group mentorship. And then you have the whole virtual world at our disposal, and all that. So I think, that's important. And also to say that, career, and I would say that career counseling and advisory, and I think a bit was said about that, should really be made compulsory in our schools. I think some schools have that, but other schools don't necessarily have that. I think many people can access that, the resources that are available to them. Okay, and then to the second prong, which is digital, whilst, really the formal and more traditional mentorship approaches are better targeted, they're not quite scalable. So we must really find more channels, to build the soft skills and the confidence of our youth. Again, there are lots of online communities, and really anyone who's successful, who you're targeting, is really online. I mean, you can see what they're doing, what their journeys have been, and that's mentorship, really. It's not a lot more than that. It may not be one-to-one, but a lot can be picked up online. Young people, Gen Z and millennials, have a lot of influencers, but it depends on who's influencing them. Who are they following? There are lots of people, professionals online who they can follow. There are successful entrepreneurs and all that who they can follow, and they can see what they're doing and how to learn from them. So I think just to say that to scale, we need to kind of break out of the more traditional and more formal one-to-one mentorship approaches and platforms, and try to use the platforms that are much more scalable. And also to the point, I think one of the points that was made, which is really, the people around you, right? Mentoring at home. That was speaking to internships at home. But I was thinking about that, and I was saying, look, everybody I come across, I should be a mentor to that person. And that's really the way it is. It comes naturally to me, whether it's church circles, whatever organizations, my children, my nieces and nephews, it comes naturally to me. And I think I learned from the best, because Bola mentored me, and then she mentors my daughters as well. So just automatically getting in touch with young people, talking to them, whether it's an organist in church or what are you doing, whether it's your security man who has a degree and is not up to much else and all that. Some of the young people now actually employers themselves, lots and lots of them. And every day I listen to what they're doing, and it's amazing. So I think, rather than, think of our youth as victims, and I don't mean to be sound contrarian, I think there's a lot that is available to them that they can leverage, whilst we worry about, creating the jobs as well. But having said that, I think the exposure that this internship will provide to our young people is, invaluable. And I wish there were a lot of organizations that are doing the same thing. I'm going to pause there now in the interest of time. Excuse me, time. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone. Thank you for a wonderful panel, from Bola G to Juliet's opening dialogue, which I found very insightful. And I really want to thank all my panelists. Unfortunately, in the interest of time, we're not going to go back and ask you to give your 1-minute advice. But I think the one thing I would say here is this is a challenge we all need to address. Every one of us need to get involved. And this also speaks to those who are employers and those who should make themselves available to the youth. It does, and I would use the words of somebody who says it does take a village, but it's going to take a whole nation to solve this, because this could become an existential threat for all of us if we don't address it. So with that, I will thank you very much. Thank you all the panelists. Thank you, Fueko. Thank you, Neka. Thank you, Ogogo. Thank you, Bola. Thank you, Abba. And